Hey everybody, welcome back to the next part in my Creating a Great Tone series for our Line 6 Helix. I haven't done a video in this series in a little while, but I wanted to cover what I think is a pretty interesting topic. It's interesting when you make tones on a regular basis. Either I do some for the marketplace, which are for sale. I do a lot for dialing in videos. I've done some just custom ones for folks. And it's always a little bit of a strange thing. You know, I always put, and I've talked about this recently, this sort of, ish and esque next to the type of tone I'm making, right? Recently, a Joe Satriani-ish tone or style tone, right? And I always try to put that disclaimer, and there's always really good reason for it, because there's so many variables involved. And I think this is always a really important thing to keep in mind, an important topic to discuss when talking about, creating tones, especially that other people are going to use. What are some of these variables? Well, obviously the player themselves, right? We're going to have different styles of playing. We're going to have different technique, right? How hard we hit the strings. Are we finger picking? Are we picking? How do we pick? How hard do we pick? How hard are we pressing the strings? Something as simple as playing with, great intonation versus poor intonation can actually give the impression that the tone doesn't even sound as good because people don't like what they're hearing, So there's all the variables of the player, there's the variables of the speaker system they're using, the room they're in, just what they like, but also the guitar that they're playing. And a lot of times when I'm dialing in a tone, maybe trying to get close to sounding like an actual existing tone from an artist that everybody is very familiar with. One of the big disadvantages I have is I don't necessarily have the same guitar they had with the same pickups, right? So that's a huge disadvantage right off the top. A lot of times I try to find out what they used and use whatever I have in my collection that's as close to that as possible. But it's not always easy, right? And sometimes I don't even know what they used, right? So that's always tricky. So I thought it would be interesting to let's sort of focus on that one variable. Obviously, we can't, showcase how different players, well, I guess we could. If I had a bunch of different players here, we could all play through it and say that might be something fun to do. I'll have to look into doing that. But I was thinking more of let's look at what effect just the guitar has on the preset, and how that can possibly be a reason why some folks, when they get a preset off of somebody else, whether purchased or whether free from Custom Tone or whatever, when they plug it into their system, all of a sudden they go, this doesn't sound the same as what I heard on the video, or this doesn't sound like what it was supposed to sound like. And a lot of times it can come down to just the guitar itself. Now, some folks actually look at it like, I must use the same guitar that was used for the preset, or as the preset was designed to be used for. When I make a preset, I actually look at the guitar as an extra tool, right? I want a preset to have a different sound depending on what guitar I use. So if I grab a Les Paul style guitar versus a Strat style guitar, I want that preset to sound good still, but sound different, so I can use it in different scenarios, if that makes sense. So I really don't necessarily try to tune any of my kind of more generic presets to necessarily sound better with one style of guitar. I mean, obviously there's some, say metal presets that aren't going to sound as good with a Fender Tele, some obvious things like that. But then again, who knows, right? Maybe that's exactly what we want to do. But I like to have that guitar there so that I can, tap into its sound and make that a part of that preset. And in that way, the preset is going to be much more flexible. But what I wanted to do today, and this is nothing about opinion or stating, one thing is better than another, but what I wanted to do is take the guitars that I have here, take one preset that I have, and play a very short little lick, riff, whatever you want to call it, through many different guitars, and do them all back to back so you guys can hear what it sounds like without changing the preset, just by changing the guitar, okay? Obviously I have, a nice selection of guitars. I don't have every style of guitar, but I'm going to take it through all the ones I can. Plus I'm going to take us through the Variacs as well, which will be interesting. And I'll go through the various settings from magnetic pickups all the way through sort of the stock models that are included with the Variax, okay? The one thing I'll keep in mind is this can't be totally scientific for the simple fact that every time I play this riff, I'm going to try to be consistent with it. But there's no guarantee I'm going to play it exactly the same. Hopefully I won't be picking harder in one or the other. That's always the problem with this, is it's very hard to do this scientifically unless we had the precise riff or lick played precisely the same way with precisely the same velocity on the pick strokes and pick direction and pick angle and everything else. Now that's really splitting hairs, but it is a good thing to bring up. One thing I will do that is in my control is after the fact and I record these, I will make sure that they are level balanced to the closest possible level matching I can get them to, so that we take that out of the equation at least, simply because, as I've discussed before, and is so important, that when we're comparing two different audio files, if they aren't level matched, we are not actually hearing or we won't be able to discern what the difference is between them, because we will be fooled by the different level on them. So I'll do my best to do that. But anyways, this is more of a fun thing, just to sort of show how different a guitar can make a preset sound, or maybe not, maybe how much the same. We can all draw our own conclusions after we do it. So without further ado, let's jump over, and you're gonna watch me go through a pretty boring little riff slash lick over and over again, but we're focusing on the tone. Now the tone I'm using is from my vintage preset pack, which is available on Line 6 Marketplace. This is the Grammatico Vintage. These tones were dialed in to be slightly on the creamier, creamier, darker side of the tone spectrum. So that's the kind of vintage terminology used in there to describe them. So, but again, as long as we use the same preset for all the guitars, we will accomplish what we need to for our purposes today. Here we go. So there you have it. What did you guys think? A couple observations. One thing I did that I should have mentioned before is I used only the bridge pickup, as you can see the descriptions on the bottom of the screen. Sometimes in humbucker mode, sometimes in single coil mode, split coil mode, or whatever the options were on that guitar. I went through the Variax, which was pretty interesting, flipping through those, right, to hear the different tones. But one thing I noticed is I didn't dislike the tone on any of the guitars. I liked it, but they were all different, right? Some of them were closer than others, right? The RevStar with the P90s had a very distinct tone versus, let's say, the semi-hollow body, right? The two Pacificas, interesting enough, both have the same bridge pickup, which you heard in a different guitar. So, you know, there was things like that where, did you hear a difference between the two Pacificas because of the guitar? I was tending not to hear a huge difference there, but again, we're all going to hear this differently. And I really ask, if you do listen to this, try to listen on a good set of headphones or a good set of studio monitors in a decent listening environment, so you can actually hear the tiny details that are different. Because sometimes if we listen closely, I notice a lot of people just listen. I get the YouTube statistics back, and you know, people are listening on mobile devices. Doesn't mean they're not listening on good headphones or speakers. Just because they're listening on a mobile device, but I just always have this fear of people listening and forming their opinion with their iPhone in their hand with this little tiny speaker, you know. So anyways, try to listen in a good environment. What do you guys think? I think it shows a couple things, that there can be a dramatic difference in the tone simply by changing the guitar. So this kind of brings that point that I always try to make into further light, really, that, you know, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to recreate a specific tone for somebody or that somebody wants, because as soon as they grab their guitar and play it with their system, all of a sudden everything sounds different. Thus the need for a lot of these to be tweaked, and oftentimes are good, as I always point out, are good starting points for somebody to get an idea down and then tweak to their ideals, their room, their guitar, and whatnot, what have you, right? The nice thing about the Variax is that anybody with a Variax, as long as they have the Variax preset as well, then they should be able to take that variable out. Their Variax should sound exactly the same on the same setting. So that's pretty interesting. And I am going to try to utilize that a little bit more into some of the patch creation that I do, so that some folks that do have the Variax can kind of just have that one less variable to work on. Anybody interested in more Variax stuff, go check out my good friend Chad Husky's channel. He has a lot of great Variax content. Please go subscribe to his channel. Really awesome channel, and really awesome friend and great guy. So what do you guys think? I hope that was somewhat entertaining, enlightening, educational, I don't know, or all of the above, or none of the above. I don't know. Anyways, I thought it might be interesting to just cover that, because I had a lot of people ask me, you know, about this topic and about how much difference does a guitar make to it. You know, some folks that maybe only have one guitar and that's all they can, you know, that they have at their disposal. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please like the video, share it if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll have a lot more content coming in the very near future. And again, thanks so much for tuning in, and ciao for now.